Hi, this is Mamta Patania. Welcome to the session on F.W. Riggs' Ecological Approach to Administrative Theory. F.W. Riggs was one of the pioneers in developing administrative models and theory and most representative administrative thinker in modern society. He was well known for his studies in comparative public administration, especially the Riggsian models, fused prismatic diffracted models. He was Professor Emeritus at Political Science Department of University of Hawaii, USA, and received several awards from several institutions and countries in recognition to his knowledge of understanding of administrative theory. Several governments have introduced administrative reforms and modernized the organizations during the past decades. This has necessitated the scholars to critically examine the relevance of these models to the developing nations, especially in the context of globalization. F.W. Riggs made a great effort in searching for an objective and effective model for analyzing public administration in developing countries with ecological and comparative perspectives. With his background in sociological theory, he developed the fused, prismatic, diffracted models for understanding the administrative structures and organizational behavior. The main thrust of his model is that Western models are relatively less relevant to the relevant countries, which have unique environmental context, that is, social structures, economic life, cultural practices, political symbols, allocation of power and division of labor. The present scenario of public administration in the landscape of public administration, both in theory and practice, has fundamentally changed in terms of unprecedented shifts in the ideological underpinnings, structural configurations and normative inclinations, largely based on market-driven assumptions or principles. These paradigmatic changes are encapsulated often as new public management, which continues to draw consideration attention, especially in the form of divergence, convergence debate world over. It represents a more drastic transition in the developing world, where the post-colonial state-centric model of management known as development administration and Riggs' ecology of administration came under great challenge posed by this newly emerging market-centered model. Talking about the Riggsian models, the practical and the academic atmospheres such as the Second World War, the Cold War, the Ford Foundation funding for training and undertaking research on administrative system of developing countries has inspired Riggs to develop CPA based on a contextual, ecological perspective and structural functional approach. In the study of CPA, Riggs identified three major trends. Number one, the shift from a normative approach emphasizing the ideal or desirable and universal principles of administrative behavior to a more empirical approach, covering both ideographic and nomothetic studies based on analysis of actual administrative situations. Number two, the transformation from ideographic approach, that is, as reflected in the studies of a single agency or country, to a nomothetic approach, giving greater priority to generalizations, laws and theory building based on regular patrons of administrative behavior or institution. And number three, the shift from a non-ecological approach, that is, study of formal administrative institutions without considering contextual influence, to a more ecological approach that emphasizes on interaction between institutions and their contextual factors such as social structure, tradition, culture, etc. Riggs emphasized the need to study administrative systems in an ecological perspective so as to gain a comprehensive and in-depth understanding of the administrative dynamics. He used two analytical tools. Number one, the ecological approach and the structural functional approach. Ecological approach to the study of public administration first initiated by J.M. Goss, Robert Dahl and Robert A. Merton, and later Riggs made distinctive contribution to this approach. Ecology of public administration, according to Goss, includes the study of people, place, property, physical and social technology, personality and aspirations of the people, emergency conditions, catastrophe. Goss argued that administrative systems are influenced by its surrounding factors. Furthering this concept, Riggs analyzed the relationship between administrative systems and ecological factors, that is, history, social structures, tradition, customs, economic situation, political symbols, technology and communication in a larger perspective. On the basis of his studies in Thailand and Philippines, he illustratively explained how environmental conditions influence administrative systems. As far as the structural functional approach is concerned, Riggs analyzed public administration primarily relies upon a structural functional approach. He refers to a structure as a society's patron of activity. This approach basically envisages that in every society, certain important functions have to be carried out by a number of structures with the application of certain specific methods. Based on this, Riggs attempted to explain the various societies. The traditional agrarian societies, highly developed industrial societies, and developing societies are functionally and structurally distinct according to Riggs. He termed functionally diffuse societies as fused societies, that is, in traditional societies, various social functions and social structures are highly functionally diffuse. That is, there is no organized division of labor, and functionally specific societies are diffracted societies, as found within an industrialized societies. In addition to these two diametrically opposed extremes, there is a third society which is called Prismatic society. Now, Riggs' most popular model specifically emphasized that fused prismatic diffracted models are designed to be ideal types, not to be found in any actual society. Nevertheless, these models would help us to understand and analyze the societies and function of administrative systems. The fused model. Based on the experience of imperial China and pre-revolutionary Siamese Thailand, Riggs proposed the concept and characteristics of fused societies. Now, in these societies, a single structure carries out a number of functions. These societies heavily depend on agriculture with no industrialization and modernization. The economic system is based on law of exchange and barter system. The king and the royal family members and officials nominated by the king carry out all administrative, economic and other activities by themselves. The administrative system is a fused societies, is based on structure of family and strives to protect the special interest of the family and certain sects rather than aiming at universal happiness and development. These societies do not differentiate between justice and injustice, formal and informal setups, and governmental and non-governmental activities. Ascriptive values play a dominant role in a society, and behavior of people would be highly traditional. Age-old customs, beliefs, faith and traditional ways of living enable people to live together and control their behavior. In the diffracted model, Riggs uses American society as model of diffracted society. A diffracted society will be dynamic with high degree of specialization, and each structure carries out a specialization function. All organizations and structures in the society are created and based on scientific rationale. Ascriptive values cease to exist, giving way to the attainment values in the society. Governments would be responsive to the needs of the people and protect human rights. People would bring pressure on the government to get their demands fulfilled. There would be a general consensus among the people on the basis aspects of social life. Public pay attention and give respect to the laws of the nation on their own. This would enable the government to implement the laws and discharge its responsibilities without any difficulty. In the prismatic model, Riggs concentrated all his efforts on prismatic model to explain the nature and administration in the post-colonial developing nations. While doing his fieldwork in Thailand in 1957-58 and teaching in Philippines, he articulated prismatic model based on the metaphor of prism as a fused while sunlight, which represents the fusion of several colors, passes through a prism. It becomes diffracted into several separate colors. Here, the fused light signifies fused structures of a traditional society. That means single structure performing all necessary functions. The diffracted colors represent the specialized or diffracted structures of modern society, that is, separate structures or institutions for major functions. And the situation within the prism, which is transitional phase between the fused and the diffracted stages, reflects the conditions in developing nations, which Riggs began to define as prismatic societies. In explaining the nature of administration in these transitional societies, Riggs systematically used an ecological approach to explore their non-administrative domains of society, politics, economy, and culture. Now, according to Riggs, prismatic society has three important characteristic features. Number one, heterogeneity, that is, coexistence of the traditional and the modern, the simultaneous presence of quite different kinds of systems, practices, and viewpoints. Number two, formalism, that is, the extent to which a discrepancy exists between the perspective and the descriptive, between formal and effective power, between the impression given by the constitution, laws and regulations, and the actual practices and facts of government and society. Gap between the stated objectives and the real performance. And number three, the functional overlapping. Similar functions are performed by different institutions, the extent to which formally differentiated structures of a diffracted society coexist with undifferentiated structures of a fused society. Another important aspect, that is the Salah model, administrative subsystem of a prismatic society. Riggs terms the administrative system in a prismatic society as Salah model, which has a variety of meanings. In diffracted societies, it is known as such as bureau or office, and in fused society, it is termed as chamber. The Salah has certain features of diffracted bureau and fused chamber. The heterogeneous value systems and the traditional and modern methods of prismatic society reflect in administrative dealings and functional management. The administrative rationality and efficiency found in bureau are absent in the Salah model. In prismatic societies or Salah model, family, community, nepotism, etc. play important role in the appointment to various administrative positions and in taking decisions or performing administrative functions. Universalizations of laws, norms is disregarded here. In a diffracted society, the considerations of kinship are kept away from the administrative behavior and apply the norms equally. In a fused society, the political administrative system has a patrimonial character and therefore provides dominant importance to the kinship or family. Riggs observes that while it is important to describe the environment influence on other subjects, inversely, one should also acknowledge the influence individuals have on the environment. Only by taking into consideration the dual aspects of interacting influence can we hope to develop an authentic ecological model. Although the ecological approach attempts to explain the transformation process within an existing system or within the functioning of a peculiar environment, it still largely ignores the ultimate concern of public administration, namely the evaluation of policies and the realization of intended goals. Thus, rather than pointing out behavioral limitations, the ecological approach should emphasize strengths in problem solving instead. Lastly, public administrative models that build upon the foundation of the ecological approach are usually predicted on intuitive and prior assumptions. The models are also found to be inefficient and cumbersome due to their lack of empirical experience. The aforementioned criticism of Riggs' fused prismatic diffracted models are not, of course, without their own shortcomings. Some of them may have misrepresented and even distorted the essence of science, while others are derived from entirely different analytical approaches. In light of the fact that each scholar has his or her own interpretation and criticisms, one shouldn't completely ignore that fused prismatic diffracted models' contribution and strengths are very important in the present era. Thank you so much.